Welcome to the Wasteland News Network. Today is June 17th, 2021, and a few days ago the PTS had an update, and sadly they removed Weightless from the Power Armor pool. So sad news on that one. I was looking forward to it. A few days ago, the Fallout 76 development team sat down with Paste Magazine for an interview, and I've kind of culled some of the highlights of that interview. Let's talk about the upcoming update to Private Worlds. Can you share anything about what that might entail? Fans are hoping for larger servers in Private Worlds, while others, like myself, hope that Bethesda will open up Private Worlds to more individualized tools that can be used for content creation purposes. In your Ask Me Anything, you mentioned some of the changes include PvP elements along with hardcore survival elements. Is this Bethesda's way of bringing back the survival mode? Does it signify a shift in their strategy for PvP support? So right off the bat, with regards to increasing server size or Private Worlds, it's something we discussed and are actively investigating, but there's no plan on updating that with third quarter release. For individual worlds, it's going to stay at 8 players. In terms of survival and PvP, a lot of the goal of this game originally was to include more of those elements, and over time we've turned a lot of those off or leave them optional for people. Without spoiling too much, we're hopefully going to give players the tools to recreate a very similar experience on their own. Going back to the part about changes to PvP elements in Private Worlds, is that where we'll be seeing the support for PvP in the future? Well, we listen to our fans, but we also look and see at what they do in our game. Obviously, we collect a lot of data on what our players do, and so we have to look at what the vast majority of our players are doing and where it makes sense for us to invest the majority of our development time. While we have a very committed fan base that loves PvP, the overwhelming activity in the game is more centered around PvE content. It's a delicate balance for us. We have to look at it with the overwhelming majority of players are doing and make sure we're not allocating too much time away from that. So it's been a lot of our focus. PvP is great for people who love it, but for people who don't like it and are on the receiving end of it, it can be a terrible experience. So we've tried over the years to balance those two. We're hoping with Private Worlds, we will give options to people. We're hoping to leverage the technology in Worlds to give the people who want to engage in a more PvP-centric space the tools to do that on their own. But that game as a whole, we are planning to keep Care Bear, or whatever they used to call it, where it's not really an active, engaged part of the game as much. But we're hoping to support that in a more individualistic way for people who want to engage in it. And at the bottom of this clip, will Fallout 76 ever see new locations? And by that I mean fully realized spaces and not individualized off-map locations as with expeditions. It's not something we'd ever rule out. Even as a player of our game, that would be something I would love to do, right? The expeditions are kind of our immediate inroads into getting players more interesting locations and things to explore and see and do. They'll create a nice window into the Fallout universe because we can go to a lot of different locations, and it's fun to see these different locations at this point in the timeline. The door has not shut on that, but it would be a much further out initiative for us. In the short term, we're really excited about expeditions and the play loops that they're going to provide. There's still a lot of story and exploration and NPCs. All the things you expect to find in a Fallout game will be there. I think expeditions will be a breath of fresh air for the game. I think it does give us a tool to provide a lot of really different locations over time, which in some ways is a benefit. We might be able to do that in a more frequent basis versus, just one giant new landmass kind of thing. So there are definitely pros and cons to it, but this is the immediate direction that we will be taking. Yeah, and we definitely understand that content is king, so we're also exploring new events and all sorts of other things that will bolster West Virginia, which is still a large landmass of itself, as much as we can. And there's another thing to consider. Since we've shipped, we've had changes to our existing world. It's a unique thing that we can do with our game that other games prior really weren't able to do. Having the world change over time can provide a lot of fresh air and a breath of excitement and new opportunities for exploration and story. And will 4- and 5-star weapons will be included in any drops, or will those only be craftable? With the 4 stars, that's interesting, kind of taking a step back. With the Steel Rain update, we're expanding the 3-star legendary crafting into power armor items, so that's going to add a lot more build variety and versatility. Moving forward to 4 stars, some of our original plans we're rethinking a little bit. And that's really heavily based on our player feedback from the public test server. What I would have told you a few weeks ago, it's changing. That said, with 4 stars, there's always going to be the player expectation of power gain, right? So we want to make sure that we're meeting that expectation. It's tricky because we have very powerful builds already. There's only so far we can go. But I will say that we're going to do our best to meet that expectation. There's still a lot that we're rethinking, and a lot of that was based on some really great feedback from the PTS players, so we listened and we're adjusting. Legendary armor seems to be the feature fans are most excited about for the Steel Rain season. I noticed on the recent update notes that Unyielding had been nerfed. A lot of people will be heartbroken about that. Weapons seem to have been given new mods with the legendary upgrades. Are there any plans to bring any LA-specific mods into the mix? Yeah, so we've added new mods to the weapons. For the power armor mods, for the most part, they adapted the ones that had made sense off of the armor mods. I'm drawing a blank right now. Honestly, if we've added any new ones to the power mods, I'd have to go back and review. He did review, and yes, they had. But we're planning for the future. Once we move into the 4 stars, we have plans to add more mods across the board as far as balancing and adjustments like changing things for power armor versus armor. We're seeing and learning what the differences are with adding these mods onto power armor versus armor. And you know, we have to make adjustments. So we try to be as transparent as we can with them as to why we're doing it. Across the board, we've actually boosted a great majority of the legendary mods, especially the ones that weren't as popular before. We've really tried to avoid nerfing, and actually for the vast majority of the changes we made going into Steel Rain are actually improvements. We learned that lesson early on. We try to be much more additive than negative in terms of fixing things by adding benefit to things that are weak instead of removing power from things that are strong. There are always outliers that you can't quite do that without a huge sea of change to the game. So occasionally we do have to nerf, but we take it very seriously. Camp slots. Any word on the final number, and are there any plans to allow underground shelters to be separate from individual camp slots? And is Bethesda open to expanding the number of character slots in the future? And any chance we'll be allowed to have more than one companion at our camps? A lot of questions there. I'm trying to remember what the engineering limit was on the camp slots. I believe we're putting in the ability for 4 more. Jeff Gardner says, for a total of 5 camps. I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but I don't care. That's coming with update 28 with Steel Rain. So there we go. Total of 5 camps. That might be expanded on from there, but there are back-end database concerns. We put as many of those up as we could, and important here, to be clear, the next 4 are for sale. Right now, we're sticking to 1 companion per camp, but I think pets are going to be separate. Pets are going to have their own slot, so they would be in addition to the companions, but right now we're not planning in the immediate future to expand the number of companions. There's still a lot of technical limitations that really prevent us from going down that path, which is not a great answer that you want to hear, but we are planning to let you have a pet and a companion. What's the 5-year plan for Fallout 76? Well, we can't share details, but anytime you look at anything in life 5 years down the road, I think it's a lot of wish list things. Fallout 76 is going to be in existence for 5 years, I'll tell you that. The reason you don't want to put a lot in stone in a 5-year, like let's say 2 or 3 or 4 years down the line, is because you don't want to be wrapped with the fans, right? So what the game realities are showing you. So sometimes you fall in love with a feature and then you finally get around to making it in 2 years. And I'll remind people, like, just because Mark or I approved something years ago doesn't mean it's still yes years later. We always need to be reevaluating ourselves based on current realities. And so we definitely have plans well into the next year and probably the year after that. But those will change based on PTS feedback, based on all sorts of things. But definitely have plans, and we're definitely looking forward to supporting the game for years and years to come. So basically they're saying right now, our opinion of the game and what we want in the game, please make sure you get your voice heard when the PTS is open, and the PTS is open for feedback. We listen to our players. We do have a long-term vision for the game. We adapt and we pivot based on what our players are doing in the game and what they're saying. And so what we want to do, too, honestly, we are fans of our own game. So, we'll play the game and say, that'd be cool if we did this. And then a lot of people will find a fan who already thought of it. And it's like, see, if we can justify it now, let's do it. This game has been so wonderful because of the interaction with the fans. Honestly, it was difficult at first, I won't lie. But that was all very fair. These days, it's awesome to put stuff out and see what people have done with it, like giving people the freedom and creativity to explore this world, and however many tools we can give them, like, it's a wonder, it really is. And again, that interview was from Holly Green, the editor-at-large of Paste Games, or Paste Magazine. I will leave a link to the full interview in the description below. And now on to the rest of the news. So the rest of the video is a series of links. There'll be a link to this, which is the Steel Rain reveal trailer. You can see the boss in the background. Shh. And the trailer for our first expeditions called The Pit. It was actually a really, really good trailer. I think it's their best, most suspenseful trailer, not just showing you a story, giving us a sense of mystery and as to what we can expect in expeditions coming up in 2022. And the third video is the Steel Rain developer dev dive video. It runs about 15 minutes long, and it's going to feature all of the things about Steel Rain. I haven't played it yet, so I'm just going to watch it very briefly. I don't want to be spoiled by anything. So I'll leave you with links to a couple of videos and also this reminder. It is Gold Rush weekend, so you get double the amount of gold that you can cash in. So cash in those T-notes for actual gold bullion at either Crater or Foundation. The event begins today at noon Eastern and will end Monday, June 22nd at 12 Eastern. Thanks so very much for watching, and I'll see you guys out in the Wasteland.